Okay, let's get going. Welcome to the second live stream for Swig at home. We'll get started with some intro stuff and let people join in. So I'm holding this second one. Next time I hope we'll see someone local step up and want to take part of this. I'll talk about that more later, but I will help whoever wants to give this a shot to get ready what they need on their side and so forth. We could also do a dual thing with two people doing it together. Anything to just get practice and get more people taking part in this. So let's see where we're at with the number of people. We have 7 people. We are we'll wait for a couple more minutes, I guess, before we start into the real presentation. Said it last time, anyone that wants to be able to comment on this, you just click on the comment in the stream there, and it will tell you that you're creating a channel or some such. Well, you could use it to have a channel, but really you're only getting an account on YouTube for the account you already have that is allowed to make comments. If you've made comments on other streams, you already have done that, but for some people it might be the first time. With that, let's set this up. There we go. Like that, yes. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Mattias Magnusson. I'm the owner and the consultant at Evil Ape. I'm the founder and leader of Swig, and you can find me on oradbdev.mattiasmagnusson.com. That's my blog. You find me on Twitter, Mattias Mag, and I'm an Oracle ace. For those who tuned in to last week's session about creating a wallet and so forth, I have about 4 blog posts up by now that talks about ACL and wallet, and a little bit about the corrections from Ilmar, who I talked to quite a bit after that stream to talk about his suggestions, and there's a blog post just on that feedback and how that helps us, and it finishes off with a blog post for how you can do all of this just on command line. You don't need a web browser, and you don't need any manual steps. You can just, with scripts, completely set up your wallet with you can completely set up the wallet with trusted certificates so that you can get working what we did in that session. And yeah, I talked about that I'm an Oracle ace. This is the slide for the ace program. There are 3 levels. It starts with an Oracle ace associate, then the middle level is an Oracle ace, and then there are the top level, the Oracle ace director, which very few reaches. It's a lot of work, and all credit to them. If you want to start working your way towards this, I'm more than happy to help you, and you can also connect directly with the ACE program. Have it on the right side here. You can also nominate yourself if you think you've done the work required to be part of this. It's about sharing knowledge. I also want to give a push about the Oil World magazine. I think everyone should read it. It's very, very good. One reason that it is good, or one reason I like it, is that it is not, it doesn't have Oracle and such thing behind it, so it writes more or less the truth, not filtered through marketing. It is set up by the EMEA Oracle User Group community, and it's free. You can just download it, you can read it on the web. Go ahead and take a look. Also show this that I usually show, where it shows a little bit of the content that's been in some of this, and it shows that it's very many different things. It's Apex, and it's general things about the business, and it's developing in the database, pure DBA things, whatever you like with the space. It will cover it in some of its articles. So with that introduction, we're over to today's session and talk about a little bit about me, and I'm just gonna check the numbers here. And so what we're going to do today is that we're going to take an Apex application, we're going to change it from being authorized the standard way with Apex, with a cookie-based or what have you situation that is standard, and then we're going to make it be authenticated with Azure Active Directory, Microsoft's Active Directory solution that just about everyone in the world is using. This is effectively creating a multi-cloud solution. The multi-cloud part is really just authenticating via Azure, and the Apex one is running in the Oracle Cloud. It's running on an autonomous database. And we also see that there's no coding required. I like that when it's security, because security is for geniuses. The rest of us should probably stay away from it and do as little as possible with our own code in security frameworks. So, the mechanics of how this authentication works is that we go to the Apex application. Before we even see the application, control is transferred over to Azure. It prompts to get a username. Control is then sent to our Azure domain, the one we have set up on Azure. We complete the login by entering the password, and when that is done, it transfers control back to Apex. Apex takes this and finishes off the login, giving you a pure session in Apex. And when that's done, you are sent, or you are shown, the very first page. Just how a normal login to Apex is what happens at that point. The rest of this is sending you around to complete the authentication. So it's kind of complex in what is needed to make that secure login. It is very not complex in how it works for the end user for what we need to do to set it up. So Microsoft Azure, I'm not sure if everyone has looked at it. I hadn't before I looked at this. It has a very appealing interface. They've done a really good job. They have a good set of free services, free forever, like Oracle likes to call them. AD is one of them, and I've said 250 entries here. That's wrong. It's 250,000 entries that you can have for free in their AD. Pretty sure I'm not going to reach that limit. And it's very easy to work with. They've done a good job of setting up information, pretty good job of navigating. There's quite a few things in there, so yeah, you can get lost, but but it's well done in how you navigate and how you find information. And if you want to learn how to set things up, they have good instructions for that. Very nice. And Oracle Cloud then, well, I'm pretty sure everyone has seen it. I like the interface a lot now. I think the last version of it has been a very big improvement in it. It is autonomous, and I see that I've forgotten to do something here, so I'm gonna do that because, of course, you should see me. That was at least the intent. There we have me. Very nice. So, yeah, so autonomous and more stuff are free services. Of course, they're limited, but free stuff is always limited. You can do a lot with it. It's very nicely documented now. Of course, you can always find things that you don't find, but compared to how it was a while back, it's very nice. You can find a lot of good information, and the information is dedicated to cloud. It's different from the on-prem documentation, and I think the on-cloud documentation actually is better. Sometimes I read that to understand the on-prem software better. It's a great place to test Oracle, or what is Oracle Future, because what they build there we will eventually get on premise. So it's a good place to understand what's coming. Apex is included, and it's set up automatically. When you get an autonomous database, you have Apex completely set up, ready to go from the beginning. And yes, I do believe everyone should grab the free forever autonomous transaction processing or data warehousing, or one of each, to play with. You can do a lot of it. It's kind of hard to overload it. You get a lot of transactions included in it. So for testing things out, it's great. So Oracle and Azure together then. What I'm doing here is to set it up without using the joint venture they have together now. This worked before it, and it works without it. So it's the same thing we would do on-prem. It's the same thing we would do if someone else hosted an or Microsoft AD service somewhere. And it integrates so nicely as it is as if they were built to be a single solution. So the Apex application, it's setting up a new application. We can accept all the defaults, and the only thing we do to it is really to edit the application properties, because we want it to require login as soon as you start it, so that the security for the application must not be public user to force a login. So let's take a look at how it looks. So here's where we go on the setup, on the configuration for the properties. Authentication schemes must not be public user. And then when you test it, of course, you get the traditional Apex login page. It has not been doctored in any way at all. It's the way it looks these days. And then when we're logged in, we get to a test page. I just dropped in an interactive grid just to have something other than just a blank white page here. So it doesn't really matter, just to show that it's live, essentially. So let's talk about the setup on Azure, because that's where we're going to start. We're going to start to set up something for Apex to connect to in our AD. I'm not going to show how you create the AD, because you really don't. You just click and say, I want to look at my default AD in Azure, and there you have it. And then you can create a user. We're not going to do that. So what we do is that we go down and we register an application. And an application there is like a container. It's something that is specific for your own application, so that you can have different ones of these and you can remove one or disable it or manage it, or you can even say that this specific application only these users of all the users I have in my organization can use, so that you can partition users to be the ones that can use a certain application for you. We provide a redirect URL for Apex, and this is when we're done on the Active Directory in Azure. It will send control back to Apex, and this is the URL that's used. The domain is, of course, whatever domain you have. The rest is pretty much standard, or unless you've changed that. And then Apex application callback is always there, and it's the first thing that comes after. It's not with it. It doesn't reference an application or anything. It's for an installation. It is always the same. And so send information application part of Active Directory to log in. So it's a basically username, password, the client secret, and we also need what's called the discovery URL that goes to a page that shows pretty much what the Active Directory allows us to do, what fields it has, what we can send in, what we can get back, and so forth. Take a look over here, and then go here. So this is Microsoft default directory. Maybe I need to click something, but this is the home place for the default directory at least. And I go to app registrations, as I shown here. On that, we're getting to this place, and we give it a name. I give it the name Sveog, of course, because this is for the presentation. I decide what accounts I want to have. Typically what I've tested with this far is to use what we see here. And then the redirect URL, what you see here is the beginning of the URL to my cloud-based environment. You see Evil Free ATP in here. It's my Evil Ape kind of named service I have there, and then it goes on, and then it ends like I showed before. So that's a very long name. Domains on the web service becomes very long. And when we have registered that, we get this overview that shows a few things. We're going to have this client ID later on that we need to use. And then we're going to certificates and secrets to set up the client secret. Here we get to this section, and we want to click is the new client secret here. Gets us a very basic dialog. We give it a name, and we tell it when it will expire. That's all that's required there. And with that, we get a line and We get the client secret. This is the secret we want to take with us back to Apex when we set it up later on. So now we're back here to the same summary again, and we wanted to have the discovery URL for the setup in Apex, and we find it by going into endpoints, and in there's a whole bunch of endpoints. There's a ton of them. But what we want is the OpenID connect metadata document. It is basically, I think it's JSON, and it shows all kinds of information of it, where what scope you have, and all kinds of information of what data do you want, what can be brought back, what can you use to set up your user ID with, and what kind of service does it support, and so forth. But you have all kinds of other things here you can play with. You can play with Microsoft Graph API and so forth. So that's it. Now we have set up all that's needed on the Azure side to have connectivity from outside into an Active Directory to take care of the login for us, in this case Apex. So with that, we're back to go to look at how this should be done in Apex. We will refer Apex to the Azure AD for the login, and this application that we created in Azure, which is just a container of information, right? That is what we'll be pointing our Apex application to. So that's how they work together, I guess. So now in Apex, we're gonna suddenly I've written some stuff in Swedish here. That's funny. We're gonna create a web credential. We will store information about how the access is done, is what we do in that credential. And this credential is later on then used from the authentication scheme for it to know how to log in to the Active Directory and be able to let Active Directory authenticate the user. The type will be auth2 client credentials flow, because that's the simplest way. There's a couple of other ways to do it. And then we enter client ID and client secret that we took from Active Directory. And the credential store is really located in workspace utilities. It is something that ends up in a workspace, not in the application. But in the application's shared components, there is a shortcut that takes you there. And looking at how it looks when we come in and we've said create web credential. The name is, of course, just a name. I call it Azure because, well, I want to know what it is used for, or what kind of service it goes to, instead of having some generic name. And then we use the authentication type, auth2 client credentials flow. And if you do this, do that, because this is so much easier to set up that way. And then we enter the client ID that we took. We enter the password or the client secret. One thing to note here is, it confused me in the beginning, or the first time I saw this. When you've created this and you go back and forth, you try to set something else up and it doesn't really work, then you, of course, at some point you're gonna come back here and you're gonna check that you did it right. Well, it's a security thing, but the client secret will look like it's not entered. It looks empty. And it's not empty, it just doesn't show you that it has a certain number of characters filled in or any stars at all. It just looks like there's null in it, essentially. It's worth knowing or understanding. So that is the setup of the credential. That's all it takes. There's nothing more to it. It is essentially just filling in the 2 fields that we got from Azure when we're done there. So now we're going to set up an authentication scheme. That is the stuff that controls how you log into an Apex application. I've shown a couple of different other ways before presentations, if you've seen them. The first one was a few years ago. I've talked about the Swedish BankID thing, using web servers and so forth to do that. This is using the same part of Apex to set it up. Of course, sets it up a different way or different configuration to use Azure Active Directory. So we go there, we create a new authentication scheme. We choose it to be based on a pre-configured scheme. And it's a social sign-in. Again, that is the simplest way to make this work right. And the credential store we choose is the one we just created. So that this is where we select to use that credential for the connection to Active Directory. Let's take a look at it. So this is shared components. And here we have authentication schemes. In the beginning or from the start of an application, it has just the one you get with every application that you create in Apex. And on that page, we select to create a new one. There's just 2 choices here. It's based on pre-configured, or we can use a copy of an existing that in turn at some point was, of course, based on a pre-configured scheme. So they're all at some point pre-configured. Now we get to the screen where we fill in, I guess, the most information of all the screens today. So here it is. The scheme type should be social sign-in. Then the credential store, we choose the one we just created. It's the only choice there, unless you've created more credential stores in your workspace. But most of the time, it's the first one or the only one. And the authentication provider is an OpenID Connect provider. Can be used for a lot of different things. Anything that uses OpenID. And Active Directory is nowadays fully supporting OpenID. So that's nice. Here we have the discover URL. As I said, that was the one we took from the endpoints in Active Directory or in Azure. So that allows Apex to discover all the things that can be supported here. What kind of fields are there? What things are supported? What security mechanisms are there? And a bunch of things. And after that comes one thing that I've highlighted a little bit extra, because for Active Directory, the default doesn't work. The default comes out to be profile, and the username attribute comes out to be email. Now that, as far as I understand, doesn't work. You need to, for Active Directory, to set the scope to include what you will pull back out as a username attribute. So it's just to add it to that, and life is good. So with this, we create the authentication scheme. And now we have set it up. The application is now set up to be authenticated with Azure. So let's take a look at how it looks when we log in. We go to the Apex application, and as I said before, you will not even see the application. It will immediately direct you over to Azure before you even get the, well, you don't even get to see the first page or the end page in the application, assuming that you don't have public pages that doesn't require login. But if you go to a page that requires login, or the whole application does it, you immediately end up over in Azure Active Directory area as a user now for logging in, not for, as we did before, was administrating, creating stuff. So we get there, get a choice of an account you can use. I'm only using one account over there right now, but I guess some people might have multiple. So at this point, we're in the general Microsoft Azure Active Directory area. So based on the account we choose, we send to that domain's login feature to validate the password. So it doesn't show much in how I do it here, but if you have done branding and stuff for your domain, the first page, the one we look at right now, will still say Microsoft, just look kind of generic. The second one, which is this one, will then have your logo and maybe color scheme and all of that stuff. So you just enter the password and you log in. My Azure account is apparently, at least when I took this picture, set up to use Swedish, but it's just a password prompt essentially. And when you press login here, assuming that you've entered the correct password, you're immediately transferred back. A whole bunch of things has happened here, but you don't see any of it, and it's lightning fast. So now we're into the application we started with when the, I don't know, 30 some odd minutes ago, 35 minutes ago, when we started talking about this, or when I started talking about this. This was what we saw, exactly this was what we saw then, but then we had logged on with a standard Apex login prompt. And now we've shifted that so that Active Directory is taking care of the logging in and proving things for us. And we see up here in the right corner, the email address is now my username. And that user isn't registered with Apex, and I can show that in a little bit, I guess. So now, there's a type of that, but seeing is believing, right? So let's see if we can take a look at this live and not just have the canned version of this. And it should be like that, and it should be like that. So let's see. Okay, it's still logged in here. So what we want to look at here in this is the builder, of course. We can look at the user accounts to begin with, just to show where we're at. See here, there are two accounts. It is the dev account that builds stuff, and it is the workspace administrator, which is just called press here for presentation. Note here that there is no user that has the name of my email address. This email address is just where it sends email to. It is not the user name that would show up in Apex in any way, shape, or form. So that account doesn't exist. Well, no, it doesn't exist in Apex. So now let's step into the application. So now, if I try to run this, I get this prompt up, like I said. So I choose my own account. And I've forgotten my user account. Let's see. That's embarrassing. No, hang on. Of course I have it where it should be. So just like Oracle, they require quite long passwords here. So with that, and now I'm logged on. So that's all it took to log in. For the user, it's nothing really special. It's the login we always get for all kinds of things. And we're now logged in. Up here we see the user the user account being the account that Apex doesn't really know, but will get set to it, and this is what gets stored for the app use and so forth when you move around in the application. And without us even having to configure anything for signing out of Active Directory, it is automatically part of it because the discover thing told Apex where to go for it. So I can now log out from it. So, and I'm logged out, and I can close out my window, and I'm back here. And seems like we don't have any questions in the log for it. If I take a look here, what I talked about before, no, not there. Web credentials, here we have it. So see, I'm in the application shared components now. If I go to web credentials, you see up here in the cookie bar or whatever, that's not the name, but the thing with that shows where you're at, shows that you're in workspace utilities. So we've left the application area really and over in workspace utilities. Anyway, here it is, and if I go into it, we'll see this stuff that I filled in before. And as I said, they look empty. They have a value in the credential stored, but I'm not allowed to see it here for security reasons. I should not be able to just go in and cut it out, I guess, because if you have those, you have access. So that is that part, and the other one we set up is authentication schemes. So here we have the one that you always get, standard application express. And here's the one we set up for this that connects to it using the credential store. And here's the discovery URL, and ends with this stuff that we showed in the in the Active Directory, in Azure Active Directory. So that's all it takes. And let me jump over. I'm going to take a look at one thing here on my computer. Okay, so if anyone has a question or a comment of any kind, just drop it into the to the chat, I guess. I'll head back here, do that. Send that out. So since this isn't a live audience, I can't really you have to write questions if you have questions, because you can't, of course, take them any other way.